Ghost of Yotei is one of the most cinematic journeys through a video game you will ever take, and while it does extend further and explore almost every mechanic you'd be familiar with from Ghost of Tsushima, this isn't necessarily for the best. But when Ghost of Yotei is at its best, it soars like a leaf on the wind, but the extreme highs are often held back by some odd pacing and progression issues, and a very weird thing that I noticed in cutscenes.
And on your ghost among the living.
Sometimes I feel like that is what I am.
Draw your sword.
So I've played 50 hours on my PlayStation 5 Pro, and I experienced virtually no bugs or issues, minus 2 times the game crashed in the very late game missions, and a few minor hiccups here and there. But all in all, at launch, this is kind of what you would expect from a PlayStation exclusive in terms of polish and its visually stunning design. There are 4 graphic modes, by the way, with a quality mode targeting 30 FPS that does have a little bit of ghosting issues, performance being a 60 FPS target with a lower resolution, a ray tracing mode which is targeting 30 FPS but has a lower resolution than the quality mode, and a ray tracing pro mode which is exclusive to the PS5 Pro, which is essentially the ray tracing mode but at 60 FPS, and that is how you will see basically all of the footage in this video. However, the ray tracing here, it's hard to really notice it in a massive degree. There's a couple of scenes where you can absolutely see it, but it doesn't necessarily change the experience. So if you're playing it on a standard PlayStation at quality or performance, you won't really have any problems. But I would recommend a performance 60 FPS target just for a fast-paced action game like this. That's not the only modes that I tested though. There are also the unique modes to Ghost of Yotei. Watanabe mode, which is a new mode that features original lo-fi music that will play just in general exploration. I remember seeing this in the gameplay reveal and thinking like, why would anyone use this? Like, wouldn't it just get in the way? But I actually really liked it and used it quite a bit just when I was generally exploring the world. Mic mode adds more blood, mud, and a tighter camera angle, which didn't really notice the camera difference specifically, but the particle effect additions was quite nice in a mode that you can just kind of turn on and leave if you just want that extra aesthetic. The Kurosawa mode does return from Ghost of Tsushima. Not personally something that I enjoy from a first playthrough perspective, but it is there if you did want to turn it on, because personally I feel that it robs the world of part of its beauty, especially on a first playthrough, as the color palette is so strong in Ghost of Yotei and you really want to experience it for yourself.
You're here too. Let's get our bearings.
Storm's brewing.
Wiggle your toes while you still have them.
Ghost of Yotei doubles down on Tsushima's open world design. Here you'll follow the wind and the birds and basically nothing else, which is a blessing and also kind of a curse. Firstly, the game drops you into this open world immediately with virtually no real direction, and it's up to you to find that direction, find that thread that's pulling Atsu through this world. We'll talk more about this in the story section, as I think it relates to your connection with the game from more of a story perspective than an open world perspective, but I initially found the game and Atsu's journey really hard to connect with. It's very directionless and quite overwhelming too early, which in a way is an interesting way to design your open world in just dropping you in there, and then as you interact with random NPCs and characters, those threads are presented to you dynamically, just depending on where you are and who you're interacting with, and then it's up to you if you choose to pull those threads and follow them to find the Yotei 6. But in the early game, I was really just enjoying Tsushima's combat system and this beautiful open world, which it really is. It's absolutely one of the most visually pleasing games you'll ever feast your eyes on. Every new region has a different visual motif and vistas for you to feast your eyes on, and basically everywhere you look, you'll just want to like stop and stare. It's just absolutely stunning from every angle. But that's also in the way that this open world is handcrafted and designed. Firstly, it is smaller than Tsushima in terms of its open world spaces, as they're really self-contained zones or regions that you'll travel to for each like major story beat that will have a bunch of myriad of side activities and all the other stuff that you can do in these regions, and then you'll travel to the next one and kind of move on. This design helps create a bit more linearity to that open world freedom, but also pushes you through the narrative much more cleanly than in Tsushima, where you've just got that massive open space that then just expands into more open space as you progress through that game's story. Every open world activity from Tsushima does return here, but there's some slightly different flavor to them. So not every bamboo strike is simply just striking the bamboo. Obviously it increases your spirit, but sometimes NPCs and other interesting happenings will happen at these locations when you arrive at them, just to make them a bit more dynamic and interesting. New activities like the wolf den and the bounties are interesting and worth doing, especially the wolf dens, to increase your connection with the wolf companion so they do appear more.
That song was very nice.
However, ultimately though, the main hook for this open world is simply like the vibes and the enjoyment you get from just exploring, following the wind, and it's almost like ASMR open world exploration, and I just really dig it. But like, if you're a bit of a cynic and you just kind of pull back and look at these open world activities, from clearing enemy camps and hunting for progression upgrades, or the slow sumi painting moments, there's nothing really special about this. It's just the same tasks and trials that you face in every open world game. And not to draw a comparison too hard, but definitely something that I've done earlier in this year with Assassin's Creed Shadows. What's different about Ghost of Yotei is how it presents these tasks to the player. None of them are mandatory, nor are they presented like a checklist to tick off. There's an element of discovery in finding these locations when you're searching with your spyglass, or you see the smoke in the distance, or you simply just stumble across a bird that leads you to something cool. The world is designed in a way to intrigue you to naturally find these locations, and then when you arrive, you'll enjoy a quiet or a loud moment of diversion. There is a vibe to Yotei that's unlike anything before. And while yes, it was present in Tsushima, I think Sucker Punch didn't lean too hard into this side of the game in fear of it, say, not working for the masses. However, with the success of Tsushima, they've like tripled down on that vibe aspect of Yotei, and I do appreciate it. That's really evident with the new camping system and its mechanics. Having to manually build a fire or cook your food, and yes, you can skip these activities after you've done them a couple of times, but that's not really what Yotei wants you to do. It wants you to slow down, smell the roses, enjoy the journey that Atsu is on. And as an open world enjoyer, it's extremely refreshing to explore an open world that's not only looks different, but feels different in the way that you engage with it. It's a hard feeling to describe, but think about it like this. When you explore an Ubisoft open world, you know how you're going to feel and what you're going to do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just like when you play Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Yes, they are both open world games, but there is a very distinct feeling of self-discovery and player freedom, and Ghost of Yotei is significantly leaning in that direction. Okay, combat's kind of an interesting one. If you liked what Ghost of Tsushima's combat system was, you'll like what Yotei's combat is as well, as it follows the same rock, paper, scissors principles that was introduced in that game. There is a solid impact to hitting enemies and a great feeling to correctly parry or time a clutch attack and dancing with all the enemies around you without the lock on, and it's fun and quite novel in today's action genre, as it isn't just a simple Souls-like lock-on system that we see in basically every game these days, though there is a target lock if you did want to turn it on. However, if you didn't like it or felt that it could be too rigid in its design sometimes, then it's absolutely worse here. So what do I mean by that? Well, every enemy will use a particular weapon type on you. The Katana, the Kusarigama, the Yari, which is a spear, the Odachi, or a shield, and a couple of other variations. In order to defeat these enemies, you'll need to use the right weapon to break their stance and defeat them. And you'll need to do this whilst multiple of these enemies with all of these different weapon types are actively attacking you at once. So gone are Jin's stances that you used in favor of these different weapons. Atsu can use a katana, a dual katana, a yari, a kusarigama, and an odachi. This means you'll spend basically every fight juggling between these 5 weapons as you quickly focus on, say, that spear wielder, use the dual katanas, break through their stance, defeat them, and then quickly switch to the kusarigama because there's a shield wielder here and you need the kusarigama to break their shield, and then a brute will appear and you'll need the odachi, etc, etc. Beyond the ridiculousness of carrying 5 weapons, 2 bows, a rifle, a pistol, and a wealth of quickfire and stealth tools, I often found this weapon juggling quite fatiguing, especially in the latter stages of the game where you're facing upwards of 10 to 15 enemies at once, and you're just trying your damnedest to focus on this one guy who's using this one weapon type, and the others won't stop attacking you, and you just kind of end up in this loop of like quickly dodging or deflecting and just trying to focus one enemy down. Because of the constant weapon switching, it's also quite hard to truly learn a weapon's animations or even enjoy the little intricacies and differences between each of these weapons, as it just kind of basically becomes mindless objects that you're using for the rock, paper, scissors game. You're not really enjoying using any of these weapons. Like, you might really love the Odachi's weapon set and using that weapon, but you're not really going to use it that much because you only use it against the brutes, and then for other enemies it's just not worthwhile using it because you need to break that stance in order to defeat them. But until those later stages of the game where you're just got way too much choice and there's just too many enemies and too many weapons and everything, I did enjoy the flow of the combat system. Standoff is just super fun to use and a really cool, unique mechanic, and just like dancing with multiple enemies at once, and especially when you can just use the katana and don't have to juggle all these weapons. It's just very fun to do. Stealth is pretty much unchanged from Tsushima, which is your typical run-of-the-mill stealth where you'll hide in grass, assassinate people, get spotted when you think you shouldn't, and then fight your way out. I do appreciate the addition of a ranged assassination with the Kusarigama and the chain assassination, as well as an ally assassination. When you have a particular ally with you, they can assassinate a target alongside you as you're kind of working together. I can't show you this as we're not allowed to show this specific ally, but it is really cool. And speaking of allies, there is the wolf, which does join you occasionally, and I actually found this to be kind of a letdown, as the wolf just doesn't appear often enough to be a relevant mechanic. Even when you have upgraded him basically to complete, he just won't appear often enough. Now, you can kind of summon the wolf in certain scenarios by singing a certain song, but ultimately, like, the random occurrences where the wolf does appear and help you out just don't occur enough. Like, I did pick up one of the early skills where the wolf will save you from dying if you do go down, and I died a lot in this game, and he maybe appeared 3 or 4 times across 50 hours and came and saved me. It's just not enough, in my opinion, to be a worthwhile mechanic, which is sad that they've spent all this amount of dev time making this wolf and the interactions and, you know, how it plays into Atsu's story as well. I just would like to see my wolf friend a little bit more often. Now, all of this is tied together with a weapon upgrade system and charms that give passive bonuses and outfits, many outfits. An aspect that I really love in Ghost of Yotei is how the progression is directly tied into the game's core design. Rather than feeling like a tacked on level grind where you gain experience for defeating enemies and you just pick a skill point, progression boils down to 2 things: exploration and combat. Now, mostly this is really just finding hot springs for extra HP, bamboo strikes for extra spirit, shrines for like the skill points, but it does go deeper than that. Like, what if the shrine is at an enemy camp? Well, you'll need to clear out that camp first. Wolf dens net you a skill point specifically for the wolf skill line, and each one has their own tiny little story that is tied to them as you're building that relationship with your wolf companion. And I just love the free-flowing nature of the progression, how it directly ties into that open world. Now, if you do want a bit more direction, you can use your shamisen to sing a particular song to locate these locations. Once you have learned those songs, it will lead you to it via the wind rather than just stumbling across it or using your spyglass. Progression does extend beyond this. Like, you can upgrade your weapon stats, which is tied to taking out the specific Yotei 6 members, along with upgrading your quickfire and your range kit, you know, those typical things you remember from Tsushima. Armor has 3 passive benefits that increase as you level it up as well, and you can have 6 charms equipped at once with new charms that will level up as you complete certain actions. But the coolest, like literally the coolest part of progression is the vendors that will upgrade your overall kit, like minus the weapons that you have to return to your homestead. I think it's really cool that when you camp, or even just when wandering around the world, that you can run into the upgrade vendors that are a part of like your wolf pack and upgrade your kit there without having to fast travel all the way back to wherever you originally met them. I'm not sure why other games haven't done this before, but it really keeps you in the experience and prevents you from going through menus or just simply fast traveling back to base, quick level up, fast travel back to where you were and continue on. So how this works is that you can go into your wolf pack and you can see the list of all of the vendors and general allies. Now, if they have specific things for you, you can interact with them on that menu and hit set up camp, and they will specifically come to the camp so you can then upgrade whatever you need to do. Or if you just want to camp, one will just randomly arrive at the camp for you, and you'll be able to interact with them, talk to them, do the upgrades that you need to do as well. And you can just find them out in the world. And I really think this adds to Atsu's journey.
The snake.
What are we going to do with this one?
The Oni.
I am a general, a war hero.
The kitsune. The spider. The dragon. Every member of the Yōtei 6 will suffer.
Set in 1603 Ezo, Ghost of Yotei follows a new ghost.
My name is Atsu.
A mercenary seeking revenge for the murder of her family by the yōtei 6. As Atsu sets out on her journey, she adopts the persona of the Onryo, which is a vengeful spirit from Japanese folklore. She wrestles with this concept of being a person and a real human, and the mythological persona of the Onryo and the revenge that that spirit is after. And I think that's where Yotei really sets itself apart. Atsu isn't an honorable samurai who falls into being a shinobi or anything like that. Very quickly, you'll learn that Atsu is definitely not an honorable person, nor a samurai, really. But that's the journey that Atsu is on. She's on this revenge tour, but also of self-discovery of who she actually is and if she can move past this extremely traumatic event that happened to her as a child, which, you know, just separately from this game's story, one of the most unrealistic things about this game is that a literal child went through this extremely traumatic event, and the trauma of this event will expand as you learn more about what happened. My God, like the fact that she is even a functioning human to any degree is kind of unrealistic, to be honest. But you do essentially start the game with little to no context about Atsu and why she's begun this journey now, 16 years after waiting, or really, you know, we don't know anything about who she is at the start of this game. And it's quite an interesting choice. We learn about the incident that caused her to seek out these yōtei 6. However, why she waited 16 years to do so, the reasons behind that, or really who she is at her core as a person, very little of that is told to you in the early stages of the game, and it is hard to connect with Atsu as a character, as just naturally, like, her personality is quite robotic and stiff, and that's, you know, nothing to say against the voice actor who does an absolutely incredible job here. Like, Atsu's just quite an emotionless person because of these events that have occurred to her, and, you know, I think that does lead to a bit of friction when you're trying to learn this character and connect with them, especially as, you know, this is your introduction to a brand new character in a brand new game. It doesn't put its best foot forward, and you really have to slowly peel back those layers as you're on this journey and not only learn more about Atsu and the Knight of the Burning Tree, but who she is now and the demons she's struggling with. And as the story unfolds, Atsu must choose between revenge or her own humanity, which is pretty typical for a revenge story, but where Yotei tries to set itself apart is the parallels between Atsu's journey and the characters that she meets along the way and how they impact her decision making and her revenge story. The yōtei 6 here, the main 6 villains of the game, beyond the main one, Lord Saito, they're all pretty faceless, and that's by design because they do wear the masks, but also you'll come to those specific regions, you'll learn a bit about them, you'll take them on, and then you'll move on to the next one without a second thought. There's a couple of these, like the Kitsune, that I specifically enjoyed because that region is quite different with the snow, but there's also quite a lot of puzzles in that region that I did find refreshing. Now, weirdly, however, I often found some cutscenes really hard to connect with, as almost every character in every cutscene is literally just standing around in a circle or sitting down in a circle and talking. There's actually seems to be some sort of a limitation, or maybe it's a directorial choice, but characters in like all the real-time cutscenes literally never touch each other or do any real emoting or physical acting. Like, they might swing a sword here and there, or maybe lift up an arm and say, wait, don't go over there.
Wait!
There are multiple twists and like legitimately emotional, impactful scenes where the characters are just standing there and they don't interact physically with each other. And I found that quite disappointing. Unfortunately, I can't show you a lot of these scenes as they're all with characters that we aren't actually allowed to show as part of the review to prevent for spoilers, but I just wanted a bit more from some of these cutscenes, especially in those really emotional, impactful moments. Now, looking back at my footage, there is one exception to this. And then the rest are from those flashback sequences that you get at the start of the game, which mostly revolve around the homestead, which is like your home from your family. And I do like the feature that you can quickly switch between like the past and the present when you're getting those cutscenes and learning about what Atsu was like as a child. But again, it's part of that connection to Atsu now. Like I know exactly who Atsu was when she was a child, her connection with her family and everything, but the game really struggles to bring Atsu out as an adult and who she is now beyond a vessel for vengeance, which I think is part of the point of the story. I really enjoyed my time with Ghosts of Yotei, but in my opinion, it is a bit of an acquired taste, one that you need to spend time with to connect with its characters and its world before you're truly in. Players of Tsushima will instantly be able to recognize its game design and connect with Atsu's journey. However, even without that experience, I do still recommend Ghosts of Yotei to you. The open world is just absolutely a marvel to experience on your own, and despite some issues with the game's combat loop and the story overall, it's really an engaging experience that is fun to play throughout. Keep an eye on the channel for guides. The moment that the game drops, I'll have plenty of guides coming out as well, so like and subscribe, do all that stuff, and let me know any questions you have about the game in the comments down below, and I will try and get back to you. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.